Hi and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I am going to give a little brief summary of my understanding or enjoyment of Superman media. And then I'm going to give a mini review of the recent Superman movie. But I feel like I can't talk about that unless I give a backdrop on how I feel about Superman in general. So prior to seeing this recent movie, I have never been a huge Superman fan. If I had to pick a hero from the DC universe, I would say that I'm more into Batman because those are the movies and the media that I'm more familiar with, like the Batman animated series from the 90s when I was a kid, and of course the movies from the late 80s and the 90s. But I also feel like Superman is just one of those things in pop culture where even if you're not super into it, there's just basic things that you already know about Superman, like he's from Krypton, his weakness is kryptonite, he grew up in Kansas, he dates Lois Lane, he works for the Daily Planet, his alter ego is Clark Kent, etc., etc. His arch nemesis is Lex Luthor. I do feel, even with being a casual fan, those are things that you would just know about Superman. And when I was a kid was when that Lois and Clark show was on the air. So it's he's around, right? But I was never a really big fan. Now, the first Superman movie that I ever saw was Man of Steel. And I liked it. Now, I didn't rush out to theaters to see it because, again, I'm not a big DC person anyway, and like I said, when I am, it's Batman. So when they were doing all those reboots and everything, trying to kind of keep up with Marvel, I really wasn't all that into it. But you know how during the holidays they'll do a marathon on TV of certain movies, so they did a marathon and it was Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, Justice League, all of those. And so I watched it and I liked it. And I liked it the way that I like Batman Forever and The Phantom Menace, if you can see where I'm going with this. And if you've seen any of my videos about those movies. Which is to say that I get the criticisms of Man of Steel, but sometimes with movies from franchises that people absolutely hate, like Batman Forever or The Phantom Menace, I feel like people have to remember how different people get introduced to different properties in their life, right? And not everybody is going to be introduced to a certain character or franchise at the same time and have the same feelings about it. So just like the kids that were children when the prequels came out, didn't see anything wrong with them, loved Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, and it was older people who were fans of the original series who had a problem with it. I think people have to keep those things in context. Yes, does Man of Steel, especially now that I've seen the other Superman movies, does it have its flaws? Absolutely. But that was the first Superman movie I had seen, so I liked it. And, sometimes I feel like when a movie gets marked as the one that we all hate, as the one that everybody has a critique of, as the one that's always considered the worst of a franchise, sometimes it just gets out of hand. And then sometimes I feel like people don't even remember why they don't like it. They just don't like it. And that's just not how I feel about that movie. It was a choice. It was a director's vision. And I just kind of feel like either you like it or you don't. But sometimes I feel like people go overboard with their hate of it in the way that people go overboard, like I said, not liking Batman Forever or Phantom Menace. Similar, in my opinion. But anyway, like I said, I actually really liked it. And the one thing that I really liked about, Henry Cavill's Superman movies or Snyder's Superman movies is Amy Adams is the only Lois Lane that I like. Now that I've seen other versions of her. And the reason why she's the one that I like the most is because she seems like the only Lois Lane that actually likes Clark Kent, if you get what I'm saying. She understands that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person, but she likes the regular version of him, the Clark Kent version, right? And that comes across to me a lot better in her portrayal than the other versions of Lois Lane, where it kind of just feels like they're annoyed by Clark Kent all the time. Like, and they're more enamored with like the Superman version. And again, this is just my interpretation. I don't know if it comes across different in comics or other media forms, but if we're just going based on like movie interpretations, she's like the only Lois Lane, like I said, that feels like she actually likes Clark Kent. And remember, I'm just basing it off the movies. I'm not basing it off any TV shows. So I don't know if it's different like in any of like the TV shows like from the CW or anything like that. But like, yeah, like come on now. I liked her version of Lois Lane a lot. But anyway, so prior to seeing this recent Superman, I wanted to make sure that I had seen the one with Christopher Reeves, because I've never seen those. So I just wanted to have like something for comparison. And I also wanted to see it because, again, people who hate Man of Steel so much, I wanted to have, a comparison. So I finally saw Superman from 1978 and Superman 2, because, in the lead up to the new one coming out, they were playing them on TV. So I watched them. I liked the first one. The second one was kind of okay, all right, man. I really wasn't into it as much as the first one. Now, what I will say about Superman 1978 is it felt very trippy, and by that I mean it felt like a product of its time, in the same way the very first Star Wars film, A New Hope, felt like something that came out in 1977. Superman felt like it came out in 1978. Like, it just has like a distinctive vibe to it, and especially the parts where they were showing like Krypton in the beginning, which I think is interesting because it's like, it's good to look at like sci-fi and things like that from back in the day to see how they had to be creative without, access to the tools we have now for like that genre in terms of like, CGI and things like that. And Krypton just looked really trippy and weird in that. Now, I don't know if it looks like that in the comics, but it was interesting. And like the lighting and the way that they were kind of like, the Kryptonians were like, had like the outfits that kind of looked like they glowed in the dark. It's kind of weird. That part kind of like, is interesting, right? But I guess I was surprised because the whole first half of that Superman is kind of like the first half of Man of Steel. Now, I know it's not exactly like it, but because they both are giving you like the origin story, they show you Krypton, they show Jor-El condemning General Zod, they show him warning the Kryptonians that their planet is about to blow up, and then they show him sending the baby to Earth, and then the planet blows up. Like, if you're just looking at it from that point of view, I was just surprised that it's like, wait, so it's like the same thing? Like, I don't know. And then just like the brief part. Now, I will say, I get why people, now that I've seen that one, why people do not like Kevin Costner's interpretation of the dad. I get that. I do like Diane Lane's version of the mother, but I get it. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, I liked that first Superman. But again, the Lois Lane character, I'm like, do you like Clark Kent like at all? Like, I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, that's how I feel about the original Superman. I'm glad I saw it. I did like it. And I do get why people have like a nostalgic feeling towards it. It's just something about, I think, movies from that era, like I said, like Star Wars or that version of Superman that, sparks a lot of happy feelings for people. So I get it. Now, the new Superman, I went to go see it on Saturday. It was kind of weird because when I went to go see it, it was like maybe 10-15 minutes into the movie and the power went out in the movie theater. Random. But then it came back on and everything was fine. But because of that, I do want to see it again just because I was interrupted watching it the first time. But I actually really liked it. And I liked it a lot more than I was expecting to, given my previous experience in the Superman fandom, whatever you want to call it. But I actually really liked it. And I want a dog now after watching it. I thought that whole plot line with how concerned he was with crypto was really interesting, and how much he was like a part of the plot really, really cool. But yeah, makes me want a dog now. Also, the whole thing where he was saving Metamorpho's baby, like, I didn't expect to be that invested, but I'm like, I hope nothing happened to that baby or that dog, because if it does, I'm gonna be mad. But nothing did. Both of them got rescued unscathed. And I really liked that in this version, Superman didn't have to do things by himself. And you really saw like that, like on a really large scale, in terms of like his colleagues at the Daily Planet did their job in exposing Lex Luthor. Then you had the other metahumans that helped him. And then just like that scene where he goes back home to Kansas with his like, human parents. Like, I thought that it was really well rounded in showing that for as, superhuman and all these powers that he has, he still relies on other people to help him. And I thought that was really, a nice message. It didn't take anything away from his powers or his abilities to show that all these people work together, to help him. I thought that was cool. So, last bit that I'm going to put in here, because like in the Snyder version of Superman, like people felt like that version of Superman was a little bit too like Christ-like or messianic, like, whatever. And because I'm a theology major and I need to use my degree in some kind of way, right? I'm getting ready to compare the different versions of Superman to the Gospels, so you have been warned. So when I was in school and I majored in theology, there is a study of, it's called Christology, but it is the study of Jesus's divinity and his humanity specifically. Like, that's what you're studying when you study Christology. And so with that, the 4 Gospels in the New Testament are broken into, or you can read and interpret them as Gospels that have a high Christology, meaning it highlights very much Jesus's divinity, or a low Christology that highlights his humanity. So, to me, I would view Christopher Reeve's Superman like the Gospel of John, which has a high Christology. Meaning, just like the Gospel of John really emphasizes Jesus's divinity and miracle-working powers, that Superman 1978 definitely gives me those feelings. And the best example to me would be the Gospel of John. Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and that reminds me of the end of Superman 1978, where he turns back time to save Lois Lane. So it's like you really see the full extent of Superman's powers, that he can actually turn back time to save someone's life. And so if you're talking about like showing like a high divinity, like really showing his power, that's why I would compare it to that gospel. Man of Steel, and I would say Batman versus Superman, so basically Snyder's version of Superman, I would compare it to how Jesus is depicted in the Gospel of Luke, which the Gospel of Luke, I would say, is somewhere like in between in terms of like showing Jesus's divinity. But the reason why I would compare it to the Gospel of Luke is the Gospels do have audiences that they're written to. And so that one is kind of emphasizing that Jesus was a righteous man, right? A righteous man that did not deserve to die. And so infamously in that version, after he's died on the cross, the centurion that's there says, surely this was like a righteous man. And so I feel like that's how the Snyder Superman is depicted, as people don't know whether they really want him to be their superhero to keep saving them, and they don't realize how much they actually appreciated him or righteous he was until he dies. And you kind of get the sense of that at the beginning of Justice League. My interpretation. Remember, I have to use my degree some kind of way. Anyway, and then lastly, this recent Superman, I would compare him to the Gospel of Mark, because the Gospel of Mark is the one where Jesus is presented the most human. It's also considered the one that was actually written first, even though it's not canonically first in the Bible. And so it's like, I feel like this Superman really emphasized his humanity. And he even brings it up in the movie when he's talking to Lex Luthor that Lex Luthor only sees the alien part of him, but he's like, but I am very human in all that I do and my interactions. So, yeah, that's what I would think of this recent Superman. But yeah, so there's that fun bit. I might make this in a chapter, so if people want to skip this part, they can. But like I said, you know, just for fun, just to use my degree. That's how I feel about all these versions of Superman. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I do plan on trying to see it again. And I actually might go see Fantastic Four because I just have, a track record of liking the versions of movies that people don't like. Because I like the Fantastic Four movies with Chris Evans. So, anyway, so I do kind of want to see it just to see if maybe I can do a comparison like I did with Superman. But, yeah. Basically, I really like this version of Superman. Having seen all these different versions, I can get why people don't like the Man of Steel version. But at the end of the day, I think whichever media that you are introduced to with a superhero, if you resonate with it, if you like it, that's all that matters. So, anyway, go see it if you haven't, and thanks for watching.